So moving on to the second side, the first one on the second side. So this would be the fourth problem. This would be number 4. We're going to draw the Lewis structure for carbon for CO. So I see that I have carbon and I have oxygen, and there happens to be one of each, which makes this really simple. So 1 carbon times 4 valence electrons is 4 valence electrons, and 1 oxygen times 6 valence electrons is 6 valence electrons. We add them up and we get 10 total valence electrons. So I'm going to start by taking my carbon and my oxygen, and I'm going to start with a single bond. And so at this point, I've used 2 electrons, so I'm left with 8 valence electrons, and I'm going to go and start adding pairs of electrons. So 2, 4, 6, 8. And at this point, I've added all of the electrons that I have available, and my oxygen has 8 valence electrons, 2 in the bond and 6 dots, but my carbon only has 4. So that tells me that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these pairs and I'm going to make it into a double bond. So if I do that, I end up with something that looks like this. And at this point, the oxygen still has 8. It has 2 bonds and 4 dots, but the carbon only has 6 and 2 bonds and 2 dots. So that tells me that I'm going to take one more pair of electrons, and I'm going to make it here, and I'm going to make it into a bond there. So now what I'm going to be finally left with is carbon and oxygen, and there's going to be, and I'm just going to put the electrons on the end, makes it look a little neater. And so now I've got a triple bond. And so because I have a triple bond in this case, the electrons, both atoms have 8 electrons. They each have 6 electrons in bonds and 2 in dots. So everybody is in good shape there. Now I need to go ahead and identify what type of bond I have. So I'm looking at the relationship between carbon and oxygen. And in this instance, I see that carbon is 2.5 and oxygen is 3.5. So I'm going to head back over here and see that carbon is 2.5, oxygen is 3.5. I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get a 1.0, which tells me it is a polar bond. I'm going to draw the dipole arrow toward the larger, the more electronegative element. So I'm going to draw it like this. I'm going to add the delta negative to the more electronegative side and the delta positive to the less electronegative side. So that would be looking like this in the solution. And then I'm going to go ahead and write the name for this structure. And since it's just carbon and oxygen, the first one is going to be just carbon. And since there's only one oxygen, I'm going to have to remember that I need to write mono. And it's ox, and we're going to change it to IDE, carbon monoxide. All right, so that's the solution for problem number 4 on this worksheet. Hopefully this helped. If you had questions.